Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Denise, and with me to present is QAD and MRP expert, Don Lindsey. Please know that everyone connects to the webinar muted by default, but feel free to type in any questions or comments you have at any time throughout the session, right where that big red arrow is pointing. And then during the Q&A, which will immediately follow Don's presentation, we'll address any questions in the order received. Also, as you exit the session, a very brief 2-question survey will pop up automatically. It's very quick but very helpful, and we are very grateful for your feedback. And then as soon as the replay from today's session is published, I will send to everyone registered our encore email. The Go to Replay button, the big blue button you see there, will link directly to the webinar replay page where you'll find, of course, the replay, as well as any questions and the answers from today as well. So let's get you to the main event. Here is just some of the experience Don Lindsey brings. So let's go ahead and learn from instructor extraordinaire.
Good morning, and thank you, Denise, for that nice introduction. And thank you for joining us this morning. After last month's look at the supply chain control tower marketplace, management systems, planning and control applications, let's this month refocus on some QAD specifics. Today we want to take a look at one of the integral parts of QAD EE, that is the business relationship functionality. Each customer, supplier, entity, employee, other is linked to a business relation code. The business relations contain location and contact information for all addresses defined in the system. They also contain tax details that are directly referenced or used as defaults for customers and suppliers. The business relationship is defined at the database or the domain level. Before we get into a discussion of the business relationship specifically, let's talk just a bit about the data structure organization in QAD. The QAD database structure starts off with the system-wide data such as currencies, users, languages, and country definitions. That drives down into the shared set data for chart of accounts, suppliers, customer information, etc. That drives down into domain data for base currency and statutory currency operational controls, which drives down into the entity data for taxes, security, numbering concerns, etc. And then down into the site data where we have inventory, costing, planning information, which we have covered in several of our previous webinars. Financial data consists of shared sets codes, which we'll talk about, credit terms, invoice statuses, profile codes, and supplementary analysis fields, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Security exists for site and field, general ledger security, users, roles, permissions, membership, inventory movement code security, segregation of duty, enhanced audit controls, which include audit trails and electronic signatures. We talked about security and roles and permissions in August of 2019, so I would refer you to the 32Soft website for a quick review of those security issues. We also need to concern ourselves with such basic user interface as menus, labels, messages, lookup definitions, and some of the basic administrative data consists of email setups, printer setups, menus, browsers and collections, and report modifications and database network issues. Operational data is normally domain specific and includes setups for items as well as most purchasing, sales, and manufacturing functions. Some financial data is also domain specific, such as the general ledger mass, which can determine a combination of account, sub-account, cost center projects, and accounting periods. Data can be shared among 2 or more domains. All entities within a domain must use the same shared set, but entities in other domains can use this data also. The data types in data shared sets include general accounts, customers, suppliers, daybooks, and exchange rates. Profile codes link specific data items in shared sets to other elements within domains. In QAD EE, on the financial side, there are three what are referred to as accounting layers. These accounting layers consist of the primary layer for daily transaction posting, a secondary layer for adjustments, such as the IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards, compliance, and some management reporting adjustments, and then a third layer for transient or temporary posting, which can be used as a what-if simulation before approvals. Daybooks refer to these layers. General ledger entries may be moved from layer to layer by changing the daybook using the 251311 mass layer transfer execute. And in reporting, you can report against these various layers. The most important element for data setup is the database in QAD. In computer science, the database is a structure of data organizationally managed in storage formats that enable for efficient access and modification of data. There are normally several databases that account for user training, validation, testing, and/or development. Such applications as Tomcat, the connection manager, database definitions also help determine the database structure. I would be aware of some of the implications and limitations of cloud implementations if you intend to go with that cloud process. The database menus allows you to connect and disconnect databases, initialize sequences of databases if that's applicable, and you can also get a list of table and a list of field elements as defined in the dbf.pdf file. The 3624.1 database control 3624.1 database control allows you to create what are called object identifier code, which ensures uniqueness of all records across all tables and databases within your company. The 3625.11 database table browse lets you look at any combination of tables based on Boolean selections. There are about 1,620 tables in QAD, and the 3625.12 database field browse, again, through Boolean selections, lets you look at any combination of those. There are about 52,525 fields in the QAD database. These you can see on normal browse. The 3624.3.1 system maintain allows for the configuration of system setup and describes the system level values that are applied to all domains and entities. Domain menus allow you to either create, we'll look at the domain account control, and then you can also create domain calendars and domain GL periods. The 36.9.24 domain account control allows you to verify accounts, set base currencies and entity, and languages. You could then set up the default general ledger, subaccount, and cost center for sales accounts, for accounts payable, for product lines, for variance analysis, for consignment accounts, department accounts, and finally, if you use service and support, the service account levels. The 36.1.1.1 domain create allows you to define domains in the current database and confirm them for use. Note the tabs: general, shared set, operational, cross company, and invoice numbering. The general tab allows for the designation of base and statutory currency, time zones, domain types, credit terms, and chart of account mask definitions. The shared set tab sets and allows for the association of shared set codes within the domain. Remember, each domain must have a shared set code for each type of shared set data. The operational tab of domain create allows you to set some of the operation functions, such as the ProPath, which is a statement of the folders and locations within the computer that allow for running and identifying of files, and the identification of a domain code page, which sets printable characters and control characters with values for each one of the languages. The cross-company tab tracks amounts for transactions in accounts receivable, accounts payable, inventory control, general ledger, or journal entry, and of fixed assets between entities. The invoice numbering enables consecutive and chronological invoice numbering. When the chronological and consecutive invoice numbering are enabled, controls can be applied to customer and supplier opening balances, customer invoice, print, post, supplier create, invoice reserves, invoice and receiving, and receive matching functionality. The 25.4.1.1 domain GL period create allows you to create a GL calendar for the year and its related GL periods for a specific domain. You can also define custom start and end dates for each GL period to correspond to your specific accounting cycles. The 36.2.4.1 domain calendar create allows you to create a domain calendar, sometimes referred to as a shop calendar. If you don't use site calendar, production line calendar, work center calendar, or process calendar, this domain calendar is used for the capacity requirements. You can set productivity levels. We talked about productivities in the spring of 2019 as the calculation of utilization times efficiency. For the statement of the rated capacity, you can also set patterns of capacity for various operations. The domain calendar exception, 36.2.4.4, allows you to set exceptions to the domain calendar. So if shop is set down or you have changes in shifts, if you don't use any of the previous mentioned calendars, this calendar may require a lot of maintenance because those kinds of date changes and operational changes may be many at your organization. The 36.1.1.3.1 shared set create. This allows you to create sets or groups of data that can be shared among domains, so that a domain can have an independent chart of accounts or several domains can share the same chart of accounts, thus streamlining setup and maintenance. And here are some examples of shares set that might be applicable. For example, if the operations represented by two domains sell to the same customer, they can both use the same shared set for customer data. This does require some thought and consistency, but it allows for excellent reporting. The 36.1.1.4.2 profile are multiple shared sets for types of data. You can use profiles to identify relationships between those shared set records. You can set the profile types and associate those then with shared sets within your domains. The daybook create. A daybook is a book of original entry, which accountants record transactions by date as they occur, and then this information is transferred into the ledger, from which information is summarized into sets of financial statements. Daybooks are mandatory in the system. You can default daybooks. Each daybook can have its own sequential numbering, and you can link daybooks to particular layers that we had talked about. You can set sets of daybooks. For example, you can have AR, AP daybooks that record invoices, credit notes, intercompany transactions, and you can also have groups of daybooks, which can be grouped together. For example, all domestic supplier invoices. This brings us back to the basic subject of our webinar, that of business relations. Business relations contain the location and contact information for all addresses defined in the system. Again, they have tax information that's set for defaults in customers and suppliers. The business relationship create is where we create these business relation records, and then these business relation records are attached to entities, customers, suppliers, end users, and provide for a single point of entry for address data that can then be used in multiple places in the system. This table is important. This lists all of the records or types of functions that exist in the system that need business relationship data. General ledgers, carrier maintenance, company maintenance, address, customer create, doc maintenance, employees, end users, entities, fixed at location maintenance, salesperson maintenance, customer ship to, and supplier create all require a business relationship. The header of the 36.1.4.3.1 business relation create lets you set the business relationship itself. You can create your own schemas for these business relationships, or as we'll talk about a little bit later, you can have those auto numbered if you like, but you need to have a well thought out schema for all 13 of those types of business relationships. You then can name that business relationship, 36 characters that show up in the business relationship tab. You can also have upward of 3 additional names for business relationships: a search name, a secondary name, a third name, which could be used for regional reports. You've got a group name, which we'll cover, and then the active field for the header. In order to create the address information, the navigation is a little bit strange for those of us who aren't used to EE. If you're still in SE, you have to right click in this area below the address. It will bring up a little dialog box, and then you can insert a row. You hit that, and then another frame will pop up for you to add the address, zip, city, language code, telephone, phone numbers, email, internet, etc. The General tab of the Business Relationship Create allows you to set the language code if the domain is restricted, internal entities, intercompany codes, customer, and then tax information, name control, and last filing information. The 36.1.4.3.1 tax information on the address tab allows you to set tax information for this business relationship in terms of tax zones, tax class, tax usage. For those of you familiar with the global tax management frame, you can get access to that user definition for those tax elements. The defaults tab in the business relationship allows you to create these supplementary analysis fields. A supplementary analysis field provides for reporting of specific areas in GL cost and projects. So it gives you a great flexibility in reporting the GL transactions and reports out of the accounting functions. For example, you could track all of the transactions relating to a particular vehicle, belonging to the organization by creating an SAF code for the vehicles based on their registration number. The features of SAF are they give you detailed views of data. You can therefore eliminate the need for separate chart of account elements for individual reporting. You can use it with standard accounts. Can't use it with PO receipts, but you can and do have system SAF codes and user-defined FAS codes. It's basically a structure. The first is you create the concept for the FAS. That's kind of what do you want to capture. You then tie the specific SAF code to that concept, and then you also have the capability of creating kind of a bill of material of supplementary analysis files for structure. The 25.3.7.1.1 system SAF concepts, you create the concept code and the concept definition. There are 7 concepts that are provided with the system: product line, site, item type, item group, region, customer type, and supplier type. And you can also create your own. You then use the 25.3.7.2.1 to tie the individual SAF code to the SAF code concept, and then that gives you the capability of having a whole bunch of reporting capability with the supplementary analysis fields. This is the example that I used the registration number for the vehicles, the VIN number. You can have a vehicle concept, a fuel concept, a usage concept, and then aside codes based on the individual VIN numbers if you want. Very, very useful for reporting. And then you've got your SAF structure create. So you create a structure code, and then you basically tie those structure codes to those concepts, and you can build in kind of, like I said, a bill of material for the SAF reporting. The 25.15.4.4 transactions by SAF view. This is probably one of the real values of the supplemental analysis fields, is the robust inquiry and reporting capability and enhancements to the system. It really allows you to nail down reporting on the financial side of the business. That brings us back to the address information for the business relationship. We can create contact people. Again, you need to right click in that area, and then that will bring you up another dialog box for title, name, gender, language, phone numbers, emails, whether primary, secondary contacts for people who are associated with this particular business relationship. The 36.1.4.2 corporate group create. This allows you to create a logical grouping of business relationships, again, used for reporting. Various address types. There's several that are provided with the system: head office, remittance, ship to, doc, reminder, and user. Reminder and remittance are primarily financial. The ship to, doc, and end user are on the operational side. Head office is the default and is used in both financial and operations. And then, as I mentioned, you can create your own user defined. So the 36.4.1.1 address type create. This is where you can create those particular address types. And again, the default is for head office. The correct and consistent and well thought out address information for suppliers, customers, and all business relationships can contribute to this more accurate, what we called SOVT, last month, the single version of the truth. If you don't want to come up with your own schemas for business relationships, you can use the 36.4.3.10 to activate the automatic creation of business relationship codes. You can set the length, the next number, suppress leading zeros, whether it's active or not, and then you can apply that to both customers. You can auto number employees. You can auto number end users, and you can auto number suppliers for the system. You can also, if you use the revenue recognition menu 37, which allows you to tie the revenue and expenses in the same periods, you can auto number those in the 37.1.50.1 and automatically assign revenue contracts for that revenue recognition process. 36.1.1.2.1. This is one of the first of the 12 that elements that require business relationships. The entity create allows you to represent individual financial units within a business for which you assess taxes and generate separate balance sheets and income statements. The General tab allows you to set the concepts for budgeting, revaluation, consolidation, mirroring, and some tax data. There you can set the shared sets for a particular entity. You can have auto numbering. Some countries that you may deal with require transactions be identified by a unique sequence of numbers without gaps. So you can use the auto numbering tab to establish that auto numbering. The tax tab allows you to set some of those tax elements for the entity create. And then you also have a tab for approvals. You can create workflows for supplier payments and supplier invoice approval. The 2.5.1 salesperson maintenance. This is used to track sales quotas and commissions by salesperson, define rates, territories. These are all maintained in this 2.5.1. A word of caution, once you've set this up, it's hard to change. It is somewhat problematic, so just put a lot of thought into how you're going to set up those salesperson maintenance. The 27.20.2.1 customer ship to create. Here you can create entirely new ship to addresses. You can indicate that one customer has a ship to equal to another customer. For those of us who use the service and support module, this allows you to identify end users that are applicable to ship tos. Very helpful for service and support. And you can create new ship to records. The 28.20.1.1 supplier create. This is where you create suppliers for companies you purchase goods and services from. It's used in purchasing, accounts payable, service and support management, and other functions. Remember, before you set up the supplier, you've got to define payment formats, payment groups, bank accounts, bank numbers, and supplier types. The business relationship tab of 28.20.1.1 comes from that business relationship create. The accounting tab for supplier create allows you to set up controls for tax detail and other profile information regarding the supplier. The payment tab for supplier create defines credit terms, invoice supplier codes, remittance settings for a particular supplier. And then there is the banking tab. And this is used to set up accounts and payment formats for this particular supplier. We at 32Soft, Andreas has just created a new EE banking maintenance loader that you might like to look into if that's an issue for you. And then in 28.20.1.1, you also have a default tab, which again allows you to set those supplemental analysis fields for a particular supplier. The text code allows you to set zones, classes, usage for text. You've got 1990 characters of freeform text that you can define anything you want to about a particular supplier. And then the 27.20.3.1, for those of us who use service and support, this allows you to create end user records and tie them to end user codes, customer and ship to codes based on their business relationship data. The accounts in QAD follow the primary account, sub-account, cost center, and project format, along with 5 SAF codes that can be associated to each one of those records. So in the 25.3.13.1 general ledger account setup, you can set the account number. You've got a GL type, cash, tax, standard. You can set the system type as realized or unrealized gain for the process. And then you can have the currency tab, which allows you to set the transactional and base currency information, rate types, etc. The analysis tab for the GL Create sets some parameters on how you're going to do analysis at the SAFS and sub and default account codes for set dates and sub accounts. The report link in the GL account create allows you to indicate shared sets, general ledger accounts, and descriptions. There is a cash tab for that account. And then again, for that GL account, you can set the SAF codes associated with that general ledger. So if you use a standard QAD, you create your general ledger account. You can then create sub-account. You can create cost centers. Caution there, cost center is not a department, 2 different concepts. And if you use the project code functionality, you can associate those FAO codes to project accounts. The 2.17.1 carrier maintenance. This is where you create the code that is used to represent organizations that are responsible for the shipment of your goods. The 2.12, most of us remember this from SA. This is where we set our address information for our company associated with the business relationship. And then we've got the address tab, which again lets you set usage tax and a couple of miscellaneous fields for tax identification. The 2720.1.1 customer create. This is for people you sell goods and services to. So this is referenced on sales quotations, sales orders, invoices, service and support contracts, raw material authorizations. So these are critical to the operation of your system. We get the business relationship tab in the customer create from the business relationship we talked about before. There's an accounting tab, as there's with supplier, where you set GL profile codes, currency types, customer types, and some revenue and recognition parameters. Then you can look at the payment tab. Payment tab has credit terms, invoice status, statement cycles, whether you want to print statements, reminders, etc. Then again, in the customer create, you have the banking functionality where you set the types of payment formats, instruments, bank accounts for you and your customer. And again, you might want to look at that new banking functionality that 32Soft has for that new data loader. And then again, in the customer create, you've got your default codes where you set your SAF codes for a particular customer. The credit limit tab allows you to define credit limits, maximum turnover days, balance on sales, balance on items, credit, etc. And you can look at that or use the 27.20.1.6, the credit customer credit limit maintain menu itself to make modifications to the credit limit statements. Here's the customer create tax information. Again, usage zone, global tax management stuff. For the customer, you've got, again, 1990 characters of free-form text that you can put into the system. Then there's the 7 3.6 dock maintenance. So if you've got a specific place that you want to receive parts, let's say hazardous material, or God forbid vaccine where it's got to be frozen, you can set up the delivery dock for that in the business relationship types. 36.1.7.1, employee create. Employees are used and they're associated with entities, and they are referenced when defining engineers in service and support, or if you're going to report labor against anything in the manufacturing arena. The 32.1.13, fixed asset location maintenance, allows you to set the location entity. You can define a valid set of sub-account cost centers for locations and fixed assets associated, again, with the business relations that are set there. In some of the old SE functionality, customer, supplier, user, and engineer maintenance, you've still got to go into those maintenance screens and verify and validate the operational side so that it can interface with the EE side of finance. You can also have emails sent out for customer create, supplier, end user, employees. You can have notifications sent out to whoever might be responsible for that. In the 2.1.1, customer data create, this is our old friend from SE. You create the customer data. That includes such information as a salesperson. We talked about the types, the region, languages, etc. There's customer data that is responsible for discount, non-sales. You can set time zones, address information. And the customer credit data, you can define discount percentages. If you require a purchase order, you're going to bill to. The customer freight tab allows you to define freight list, minimum and maximum freight weights, freight terms, etc. And then there's the EMT tab, Enterprise Material Transfer tab. EMT is basically the process that streamlines the purchase to sell model in QAD. The links sales orders and purchase orders across domains. And we're going to talk about this specifically in June. We'll cover the enterprise material data transfer. The 2.3.1, supplier data maintenance. Again, like 2.1.1, we have our supplier address from the business relationship, supplier data, performance email record. You can set supplier pricing data. There's the EMT side for suppliers, address information, and supplier terms have to be put in for the 2.3.1 supplier data maintenance. In 11.1.9.1, end user, again, for any of us who use service and support, the end user is basically the person who has the information or the product out in the field. You can define the end user based on the business relationship, define the address information for that end user, tax information. You can set end user detail, such as types of end users, operating schedules, time zones, call priorities, etc. The service office detail lets you define engineers, secondary and primary, engineering groups, escalation numbers, time and distance for travel. The create install base tab defines how the end user is going to interface with that install base record. And then in the end user data maintenance, you can actually format the invoice the way that a particular end user might want to see it based on item costs, miscellaneous, fixed price, etc. In the 11.9.1, you can set contacts for that end user, primary and secondary, name, function, title, phone numbers, etc. That kind of brings us to the end of today's quick presentation. Business relationships in QAD EE are critical to the correct statement of address. data, and tax setup for 12 of these primary elements used in the QAD data structure. I want to thank you for your attention this morning regarding this little expo of business relationships and some of the database organizational fields. The accurate, consistent, and timely update of maintenance of these business relationship records will, as I stated, help you perpetuate that single version of the truth that we talked about last month. We've talked about various data structures. We talked about the 12 elements that require business relationships, the SE or the old SE side that has to be validated and verified for the EE side to work. And remember, fields in your ERP system are not intended to be blank or inaccurate. If you want ERP to work, you got to have the information available. As we've said before, the amount of information required to properly run and operate a modern ERP or supply chain application are voluminous, to say the least. 32Soft data loaders simplify the process of getting information into and out of QAD in a familiar Excel format, which can be very handy in editing and modifying the critical data that you need for your MRP system to run properly. Data loaders can help manage this large volume of data. 32Soft offers complementary software tiles. The installation is very simple. They all come with a 60-day complimentary trial period. So you can show results to your management team with basically no cost outlays. If you're interested, please contact Denise, Alex, and myself, and we'll be more than happy to show you our data loaders. Next month, from April 19th to the 22nd, Mug, Wug, and Sug user groups are having their rescheduled virtual conference. I will be presenting, along with many, many other valuable and pertinent demonstrations regarding QAD, QAD Dynasis, Del Boomi, supply chain concepts, etc. It will be a great virtual conference, just like we had in the fall. In May, I'll be talking about the service and sales and operations planning functionality in QAD with a little comparison to what we saw last month in the Dynasis system. In June, we'll talk about EMT, Enterprise Material Transfer functionality. And then July, we'll talk about the distribution requirements planning. We hope you will join us for all of our future webinars. Again, we wish you the best for 2021. Looks like it's going to be a little bit better than 2020. We hope we're going to get back to some semblance of normalcy. Please contact myself or Denise if you think of any questions after the webinar is closed, and we will get back with you as soon as possible.
To me? Thanks, Don. Fantastic as always. We will go ahead and move right into the Q&A. Training. We do get a lot of questions about training, and yes, we are happy to help with your training needs. I do need to update my stats, but as the numbers indicate, Don keeps busy with not only webinars, but training as well. So if you have need, give us a call or shoot us an email. And as Don mentioned, the QAD user group's virtual conference is just around the corner, and the fall conference was a great event. I do encourage anyone who is able to attend to do so, if at all possible. I did want to add that for better or worse, the platform this time around is quite different. Perhaps most notably, there is a mobile app intended to optimize your experience. So you might want to download the app and a QR code reader as well, hint, hint. I intend to attend on my laptop, but there are some features that are specific to the mobile experience. And there is no April webinar due to the conference schedule, but on May 19th, we are right back at it with sales and operations planning, which is followed by EMT in June, and then DRP in July, as Don mentioned as well. Let me do a real quick check for additional questions, and I do not see any more. So talking about webinars does bring us full circle, so let's wrap up today with a quote by an expert we all know. All right, we're having some click issues today. There we go. Business relation modify information is critical to your successful use of QAD, as Don mentioned throughout. He also wrote a pretty great article, and we will provide you a link to it in case you hadn't read it when it went out just a couple months ago, or maybe a month ago, Don. I'm not sure on the timing of that, but we'll include a link to that article for additional information. And as always, thank you all very much for joining us. Don, did we cover everything?
I think so. Just a quick mention. Andreas, one of Alex's gurus, is just about ready to finish up a data loader on 36.4.1.2, the business relationship, so you can use a data loader to get your information into and out of QAD for review and update. So that will be very handy. Just for those of you who are still on SE and are thinking about EE, which I'm sure QAD would love you to do, the business relationship is one of the foundational aspects of EE, and it's good to get it right first, as opposed to trying to minimize it and not paying too much attention to the business relationship functionality. It is key to the way that QAD EE and AE are operating now. So if you've got any questions, please let us know. And thank you for your attendance today. We'll look forward to seeing you or listening to you at the MUG session on April 19th, and then be back for our May discussion on sales and operations planning. So you have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.
Yes, thanks again, everybody, from all of us at 32Soft. Have a super day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.